Hi everyone, welcome to Naturally Immune for Life. I'm in my relaxed clothes already, so I changed my Easter clothes, but happy Easter, and I hope you are going to like the new site. My second post is about leaky gut syndrome, and even though I recognize it as a factor, and this particular research has several good points about it. I'm not going to I'm not going to associate leaky gut with a primary cause. Let me put it that way. But I'm not going to get into the weeds. I'm just going to acknowledge that it's a factor found in a pretty high percentage of autoimmune conditions. So I'm going to recognize it as a factor, if not primary cause. And the bottom line is that colostrum does help alleviate the syndrome. So, what is leaky gut syndrome and can colostrum help? Leaky gut syndrome might sound strange, but it's a real condition that could be at the root of many health problems. Well, it's not exactly at the root, but it is an association and sometimes a strong association, so I'm going to acknowledge that. What is leaky gut? Inside your intestines, there's a barrier that works like a high-tech filter. It allows nutrients into the bloodstream while keeping out harmful substances like toxins, bacteria, and undigested food. But in people with leaky gut syndrome, this filter breaks down. Gaps in the gut lining, called increased intestinal permeability, allow such substances to leak through. Once these harmful particles enter the bloodstream, your immune system goes into defense mode. That's how chronic inflammation and autoimmune conditions begin, according to this particular theory, which I would say in many ways has been disputed, but in many ways, even though they get some very primary things correct. So where does colostrum come in? You might know that colostrum is the first milk produced by mammals right after giving birth. What many people don't realize is how powerful colostrum is when it comes to healing the gut. Colostrum is packed with immune-boosting components like immunoglobulins, growth factors, and anti-inflammatory compounds, and specifically in relation to their antigen response theory. Colostrum has polyclonal antibodies. These nutrients support gut lining repair and help reduce inflammation at the root of many chronic conditions. One standout compound in colostrum is TGF-B, transforming growth factor beta. This cytokine helps tighten the gut barrier and reduce intestinal permeability. Even though colostrum may increase proteins like claudin 2, which can open intestinal pores, the action of TGF-B keeps everything in balance, helping maintain a strong gut lining. Whether you're dealing with digestive issues, unexplained fatigue, or autoimmune symptoms, healing your gut could be a great place to start. Colostrum supplements have shown impressive results in improving gut function and immune balance. And that is certainly true. So I have Learn More, which is a little more in depth with the particular studies references after each paragraph. And then, but it pretty much says the same thing. And then I include this particular research paper and what was most interesting about it to me was when they gave this particular drug. Let me get it here. It's way down at the end. I have to increase this. When they gave this particular drug, it prevented type 1 diabetes, but this was a rat model. Okay, let me just read this particular paragraph because they are addressing type 1 diabetes as an autoimmune condition. Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune condition sometimes associated to diseases that are characterized by marked immunologic features such as celiac, I believe this is celiac disease, and thyroiditis. GI symptoms in diabetes have been generally ascribed to altered intestinal motility, secondary to autonomic neuropathy. However, other studies suggest that an increased permeability of intestinal tight junctions is responsible for both the onset of the disease and the GI symptoms that these patients often experience. This hypothesis is supported by a study performed on a spontaneously diabetic animal model. The authors of this study showed an increased permeability of the small intestine of the bio-breeding diabetes-prone rats that precedes at least a month the onset of diabetes. Further histological evidence of pancreatic islet destruction was absent at the time of increased permeability, but clearly have generated preliminary data suggesting that serum zonulin levels are high in a subset of subjects affected. Wait a minute. I think I read the wrong paragraph. Didn't mean to go on to asthma. Present at a later time, therefore, the authors presented evidence that increased permeability occurred before either histological or overt manifestation of diabetes. We confirmed these data by reporting in the same rat model that zonulin-dependent increase in intestinal permeability precedes the onset of type 1 diabetes by 2 to 3 weeks. Oral administration of a zonulin inhibitor, now called larazotide, to these rats blocked autoantibody formation and zonulin increases in intestinal permeability, so reducing the incidence of diabetes. These studies suggest that the zonulin-dependent loss of intestinal barrier function is one of the initial steps in the pathogenesis of type 1 diabetes in this particular animal model of the disease. So, okay, so another more data suggested that was not sufficient, but let me get down here to the drug. Okay. Maybe I didn't need to go down far enough. Okay. Celiac disease and type 1 diabetes suggests that When the finely tuned trafficking of macromolecules is deregulated due to leaky gut, autoimmune disorders can occur in genetically susceptible individuals. To challenge the hypothesis, zonulin inhibitor larazotide acetate was used with encouraging results. Besides preventing the loss of intestinal barrier function, the appearance of autoantibodies in the onset of the disease, pre-treatment with larazotide acetate protected against the insult of pancreatic islets, and therefore the insulitis responsible for the onset of type 1 diabetes. So then it provided the rationale to design human clinical trials. They were initially tested in an inpatient double-blind randomized placebo-controlled trial to determine the safety, tolerability, and preliminary efficacy. No increase in adverse events was recorded among patients exposed to larazotide as compared to placebo, but following acute gluten exposure, a 70% increase in intestinal permeability was detected in the placebo group, while no changes were seen in the larazotide acetate group. Gastrointestinal symptoms were significantly more frequent among patients of the placebo group as compared to the larazotide acetate group. Larazotide acetate has now been tested in approximately 500 subjects with an excellent safety profile and promising efficacy as concern protection against symptoms caused by gluten exposure in celiac disease patients. So that was celiac disease. It wasn't specifically tested in type 1 diabetes. Just there was a thesis. It could also prevent type 1 diabetes. But I'll just remind you that wheat germ oil prevents and alleviates celiac disease, and that would open up on another can of worms in this particular paper, including HLA, genetic disposition, and all kinds of other things. I'm just not going to go there because the bottom line is that colostrum helps the syndrome of leaky gut, and some other things that you might find helpful are slippery elm, which protects the intestinal lining as it heals, and marshmallow root, which also kind of acts as a sealant to protect the intestinal lining as you are healing and restoring normal gut function with natural oral immune therapies like MAF, GCMAF, colostrum, and immune for life. So interesting, not necessarily new, but a lot of people still are affected by leaky gut, and a lot of people still believe that leaky gut may be the primary cause, but I would just say that it's a factor in the primary cause. It's a factor that makes the primary cause worse in some people. So that's my take on it, and been there, done that, and it's just still out there. What can I say? It's just still out there, and I believe this paper was from 2011. And I don't know if I'm going to address it. Yeah, November 2011. I don't know if I'm going to address it in a step-by-step way or not, even though I do have the information on my other site. I just don't know if I'm going to take the time to do that. However, you can download this free PDF and you can read it for yourself. It is in the post. What is leaky gut syndrome? And it's also in the library. And can colostrum help? Yes, it surely can. So that's all you really need to know. And that's probably all you really want to know is how can I quit feeling like I'm being poisoned to death? And what were some of the other ones? Fatigue. Yeah. Fatigue, inflammation, and IBS. And that's just a small part of it because you'd also be having brain fog and all kinds of other things. So, okay. I think that's all I have for today, and I'm slowly rebuilding this site. But again, I'm going to do my best to keep it simple. A long historical, complicated downward slide of the health of the entire planet. Not an easy thing to encapsulate at a 12th grade level or a 5th grade level, but I am going to do my best to keep it as simple as possible. And the bottom line is still the bottom line, and you can find that in the About section. So, okay, everyone, thanks so much for your time. Please like, share, and subscribe. Again, this is 2004, 21 years. So, 21 years of accumulated research is wrapped up into this the best highly developed answers to this historical change in the landscape of the microbiota and therefore the immune system can be found here. Okay, thanks so much again and happy Easter. Bye.